gentlemen, Farid and Rahul, welcome to this podcast. Thank you very much for accepting to participate into our podcast, where we are discussing whether agtechs are a panacea for farmer adoption of climate resilient agriculture. Kindly just introduce yourselves. Let us start with Rahul.
Yeah, thank you, Edward. A very warm good afternoon to Farid. So I'm Rahul. I represent Amal Farm Solutions Private Limited, which is agri-tech startup based out at India, Kolkata. And we work on GI tag, geographically indicated tag food products, especially into agri categories, agri segment. We provide a marketplace and a platform for the GI tag products that could be, bought by both B2B and B2C clients. So today we work with 5 different types of GI tag products, primarily into agriculture, with 3,000 farmers spread across 5 different states in India. And we help them to source their produce right from the farm so that their farm income can improve. At the same time, there has been a lot of evidence on the produce of GI tag that when someone promotes GI tag or when some farmers produces GI tag products, it also helps in climate. So this is what, in short, we are doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your introduction, Rahul. Farid, please introduce yourself.
Thanks very much, Edward and Rahul. My name is Farid Wangara. I work for an organization called ECA Africa, short for Agriculture and Climate Risk Enterprise. So we basically are involved in risk management solution designing. We work with various stakeholders within the agri space in terms of provision of agriculture insurance. So we are currently present with offices in Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Zambia, but equally other projects in Uganda, Ghana, Malawi, Senegal, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, Somalia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Let me introduce myself. I'm Edward Biketi, working with the MicroSave Consulting, Anglophone Africa, based here in Nairobi. I am the leader of the private development practice group, private sector development practice group, and we are trying to launch a platform of the climate change. We are calling it a virtual breakfast club, where we bring agtechs together to have a collegial exchange of ideas and also source funds and also solutions to climate resilient agriculture. So to set the ball rolling, I have some questions for you that each of you can answer. And they are not many questions, but they are within the field that you have been working in, because they relate to adoption of climate resilient agriculture and how agtechs are really helping to solve the climate change solutions that are coming up. So I will ask the first question, where we're saying, what are your views on climate change events on farmers' enterprises, and whether these climate resilient practices are helping farmers mitigate impacts of climate change events? Rahul, kindly, would you respond to that? And then Farid can also respond to that.
Sure, Edward. Thank you. So your question could be answered, in 2 ways. The first, from the technology side. In where technologies such as satellite-based imagery, based on crop advisories, which is linked to extreme weather data, the early warning systems, uh, hyper local weather stations. These are helping the farmers to reduce their crop loss and mitigate their disease and pest attack. For example, one of the place in Bihar that is highly drought prone in India, that place is highly drought prone, and one place is highly, flood prone due to erratic change in the temperature or erratic rainfall. So what happened that the technology is helping the farmers of Bihar in India to mitigate the climate adversaries by the use of mobile based technologies. So the app itself helping the farmers to know that whether the pest is going to attack if the temperature is soaring from 35 degrees Celsius to 40 degrees Celsius in the crops such as paddy. So these advisories, the preventive advisories to the farmers are helping to mitigate the risk. My second answer to your question is the field level interventions, which is very, very important with the farmers. On field, the sustainable agricultural practices and their application is very, very required to improve the soil biochemistry, and the use of biofertilizers and biopest control mechanism will definitely going to help the farmer to cut their cost of cultivation. And this somehow balances the losses that farmer incurs due to the impact of climate. So for example, a per acre product, per acre cost of production of paddy in India or in Bihar cost around $400.
Okay.
So now this $400 to $500 of cost of cultivation can be brought down by the use of sustainable methods such as biopesticides, which is naturally available. That could be made by use of cow dung, the cow urine, the local pest, the biofertilizers could be made by use of natural resources. So this cost which they are incurring by the application of chemical based input vis-a-vis if they use that, so their soil is going to revive. If the soil is going to revive, what is happening? The water logging in the paddy field is reducing the crop productivity, and this is happening because of the excessive salinity in the soil. And excessive salinity in the soil is happening because you have a lot of urea and fertilizers which has been given to the soil over the years.
Okay.
So this kind of sustainable practices helps the farmer not only to reduce the cost of cultivation, but also improves the soil. Thereby, the crop can flourish and they can mitigate that risk.
Okay. Thank you for that, Rahul. Farid, kindly respond to the question, please.
Thanks, thanks, Edward. I think a bit of what we undertake as ECA, I think, has been a bit highlighted by Rahul. But generally, what ECA does, we have segmented ourselves into a risk management component of insurance, where we develop almost cost-effective insurance products for the smallholder farmers. As ECA, we venture a lot in working with smallholder farmers. We work with all the farmers, but a lot of our forte is to work with smallholder farmers. So we have developed various agri-insurance products that are tailor-made for smallholder farmers and largely around scale. And also things like we are doing now things like soil moisture index. We are doing picture-based insurance, which are basically enabling farmers to be part and parcel of the insurance process and participation. But beyond that, I think around climate change is that ECA has adopted what we call integrated risk management. More often than not, agriculture insurance in itself wouldn't fly with smallholder farmers for obvious reasons. it doesn't fall within their top 5 priorities. But then you must be able to show value to the smallholder farmers for them to be able to see the need to protect what is happening. Most farmers understand that climate change is real. They understand, they are able to see some of the effects of that. But then still there is need for increase in production. So we work with various other stakeholders within the agri space, seed companies, financial institutions in terms of provision of insurance. We've done a lot of downscaling of agro weather information around early warnings to farmers, just giving them together, working with the organizations like Kenya Met Department in terms of providing information on weather. We do a lot of training and capacity building for farmers. So under the training, we are not just focusing on insurance, but other risk mitigation processes. We train farmers around good agronomical practices, things like conservation, tillaging, and all those things, so that they are able to adapt positively to climate change. Beyond that, we work with input companies who are able to provide certified inputs. We work with financial institutions who are able to provide financing to these farmers, so that beyond that, if you're able then to increase their productivity from what they were doing currently to higher, then they see the need to be able to protect that, hence insurance. So we do a lot of risk profiling. We do a lot of natural resources mapping, which basically is able to track some of the risks associated with climate change. We are heavily involved now around livestock insurance, what we call index-based livestock insurance within the Horn of Africa, in terms of just early warning signs. And beyond that, not just provision of insurance, but working with other stakeholders within that value chain in terms of provision of feeds to the farmers within the drought periods and all that. If that doesn't work, then working with organizations like Kenya Meat Commission, other meat commissions in other countries in terms of early slaughtering of animals, so that then the pastoralists are not able to lose. So we are actually actively involved in all those things with various stakeholders within that space.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Those are very good insights about climate resilient practices helping farmers from your agtechs and institutions. Now, the following question would be, what do you feel are the constraints and opportunities farmers experience as they attempt to mitigate climate change? Rahul, kindly give us some insights.
Yes, Edward. So, the countries like India, we have a lot of fragmented land, and the farmers are very small. Average land holding of a farmer is close to 1.5 acre. And there are a lot of adversities on the field. For example, there is a pest attack, there is a change in the rainfall, a cyclone prone belt we have, eastern part of the India, the Bay of Bengal region. It's the most cyclone affected part. Then the farmers are small and marginal over there. So the constraint they face today, the small and marginal farmers, first of all, the reaching of the forecast or any services in timely fashion. Once the calamity happens, then the resource reaches to the farm. So we need to take a proactive action. How, before any calamity hits at the field, the forecast method or any hand holding support should reach to these farmers. Second part is that there has lot been on the development side of seeds, a plantation which is resilient to the climate. And in fact, a lot of development has been happened. So that needs to reach to the farmer at the massive scale, which is not happening. Farmer tend to grow the crop season on season, which is not very climate resilient because they do not get the right seed varieties at the remotest location. At the hinterlands, where there is low penetration of data, the access to the support services or access to the mobile based advisories or mobile based support becomes a challenge to the farmer.
Okay.
Now, there are farmers, let's say, who has even grown the sustainable way of crops. They have cultivated the climate resilient crops and all. But the access to the large market and the fair pricing model again becomes a challenge to these farmers. And here we again come back to the square one. So these are the primary constraints, the difficulties a farmer faces.
Okay.
If we talk about the opportunities, India is a big country. Now we have 14 crores of farmers. Now the farmers from the southern and the western part of the India have access to the farm level services and the market connect due to the improved infrastructure at the field level. There are a lot of technology. The farmers are very, very much accessible to adopt such technologies. Now the other part of the India, eastern part and where there is slightly remote of the remote area, now the farmers are, has not been educated, made aware enough to adopt such kind of technologies at the mass level. Though there is a penetration, but the penetration is not at the mass level. That has to be spread out.
So you're saying that just a minute, Rahul. So you're saying that the south is more literate than the north, or what?
In fact, literacy wise, the farmers literacy wise, why I am saying, because there has been a lot of technology that has been pushed to that area.
Okay.
Right. And the farmers are even more open to use the technology. Same kind of education and awareness has to reach to all the locations, right? So if that happens, all farmers will become, aware enough for such kind of technologies. I would say the literacy part, yes, literacy part, the farmers are well literate, well educated because they know how to grow the crop.
Okay, thank you.
The farmers are the biggest scientist.
Okay. So I think you'll also have to come up with a solution for helping the farmers on the other side to accept technologies and also improve their literacy in terms of communication, because it seems to be a barrier.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Farid, could you please respond to the question too?
Thanks, Edward. I think Rahul has alluded to a lot of what we experience in the same. I think there are low levels of training and awareness. And unfortunately, I think within the sub-Saharan African context, the economy supported heavily, close to almost 70% from agriculture, but a lot has not been done in terms of training, in terms of capacity building. To be able to bring farmers on board in terms of the climate change and how to adapt to this. I think secondly, I think as well issues around farm sizes. I think a lot in most of the African context, we are seeing a lot of decline in land sizes, which means in case of any catastrophic events, then farmers almost get completely ruined. Again, we've seen in the recent past a lot of catastrophic events happening much more frequently. I think when I was growing up, we would have catastrophic events happening after a period of time, 5 to 10 years, but now it's almost happening almost regularly, and sometimes even 2-3 times in a year. And this, of course, then has severe and difficult impacts. We are seeing in Kenya right now close to almost half of the total counties in Kenya almost around suffering severe starvation.
Yes.
Again, I think also issues around the government policies I think a lot of people are lobbying government in terms of improvement of policies within the agri space, within the climate change and all that. We've seen declarations being made even by our current president around that. I think we are yet to see a lot. We are more reactionary in terms of policies than actually planning ahead for such events. And also, I think there is a lot of issue of developmental partners, various organizations within that space that are almost working in silos. I think we've seen a lot of people going to do the same thing with the same farmers. I can imagine if there is a lot of harmonization around that so that then funds can actually be used in a more rational way and in a more cost-effective way. I think a lot more can be done beyond just what is being done. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Farid. Okay, we are agreeing that the climate change train has already left the station, and now we have to find ways of mitigating the events and helping farmers to become more resilient. Now, the next question would be, how can farmers be nudged to adopt climate smart practices? What I mean here is, how can you sort of persuade them to adopt the climate smart agriculture practices? Let us say that your institutions are disseminating.
Yes, Edward. I mean, this is a very beautiful question that, the CSA, the climate smart agricultural practices, every location, I'm sure, I mean, in India, we have a wide cultural spread. We have a wide cultures. Every 10 or 20 kilometers, the language changes. And so do in Africa is a wide location, variety of, varieties, location, climate, climate conditions, agroclimatic zones, multiple agri-climatic zones. So now what happens that any farm services or technology first has to have hyper local customization, and the jargons that a farmer uses in their own native language or local language has to be customized, because these language they have been speaking since generations. Now a flat technology or a very a straight line kind of a solution cutting across all the farmers will not help. First, we need to understand the location wise challenges the farmer or the group of farmer has, and then we need to customize our solution to suit those farmers. Then only these farmers will come forward to adopt CSA practices, climate smart agricultural practices. For example, in India, we have more than 14 crores of farmers, and in terms of technology, if we see, we have hardly penetration of less than 3%. Now the less, so more, all the farmers, rest of the 97 farmers are still yet to be reached in terms of technology. And however, there are a lot of interventions that are happening. So the real impact will come when you talk in the language of the farmer in terms of your technology. And that requires a lot of knowledge, lot of ground footing.
Yes.
Now the second part is that the fragmented land at the small farmers today, need a collective based farming, because for any organization or any enterprise, the aggregation becomes a challenge. And then the uniformity of the farm produce. Let's say that until you aggregate or encourage collective based farming, you cannot get a right kind of produce post harvest, which any company or enterprise would love to buy. So it has to be uniformized. So it has to first go in the collective based farming. So these two things, I think, need to be adopted at the farm level, so that farmers can be, encouraged, and the farmers will come forward to adopt CSA practices.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rahul. Farid, please respond to the question.
Thanks a lot. I think for me, I look at it in just 2 or 3 components. I think we need to invest heavily in technology. I think probably 5 years ago, within the African context, we were looking at farmers not even being having phones, having smartphones, having just normal feature phones. That report, I think, as at last year, I think almost 70% have embraced this kind of technology. We are seeing electricity becoming almost a normal thing within the African context. I think a lot needs still to be pushed within the technology side just to be able to help in embracing this. Secondly, I think what I've seen a lot is if the people within the space, within the agri space, can be able to push for better policies. I know in Kenya, for example, we have CSA associations that are running, some spearheaded by the government, I think are pushing for better policies. I've seen largely when some of the activities are arising from a government perspective, it becomes easier for adoption from the smallholder farmers. And generally just from a population side, that if this is a directive coming from the government, then you see there is a lot of interest from people in terms of adopting that. And again, as I said earlier, I think a lot still has to be done. Training and capacity building still remains a very expensive venture, but which must be supported with all developmental partners and largely again around government policies and all that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Now, our last question here would be, what do you think is the role of founders and agtechs? What role can they play in helping farmers adopt CSA and their business models for the same?
Right. So, if I talk about from Indian context, the agri-tech model is divided into 4 categories. The first is farm input, second is farm output, third is crop advisory, and the fourth is lending and the supply chain financing. Now there are startups, tech models, which is a full stack model, which comprises of all 4 categories. But there are a startup who are very, very focused and working on individual capacities in different 4 categories.
Yeah.
Now the founders of agtech has to come up with the innovative solution that will work with the farmers, and they first need to reduce the burden of post-harvest distress sales. Largely farmers suffer because they do not get a right price for their produce which they have already cultivated or produced in their farm. They very much know how to produce it, how to produce a crop. Now, because they don't find the right market, they come in distress and they sell at a very, very dirt cheap price, which in fact they cannot cover their total cost of production. So that it's a responsibility of the founder or the agtech company that based on the market driven, the demand should be given to the farmers in a collective fashion, and they should cultivate based on the demand, not based on the choice which they have. Based on the choice from the market, they should encourage to grow such kind of crop, and they should be also encouraged to grow non-traditional crop that does not attract more profit. For example, they should not be encouraged to grow more and more paddy. Instead, they should come forward and grow other crop which can give them a better price. And someone has to be the torch bearer and ready to take the first hit in this. Now, the second part in CSA is also the carbon sequestration projects. which has seen a lot of growth in the Indian subcontinent over the years. And what we see that the profit in the carbon trading should be linked to the farmers' loss they incur while practicing sustainable agricultural practices. Because we know initial days that if we practice sustainable agricultural practices, there has to be some downwards turn in the profitability. Now, how that profitability can be hedged? It could be only hedged by by some other source of income, and that could be very well addressed by the use of carbon based method or nature based solutions, where they can reduce the total cost of fertilizer uses, thereby you can improve the crop, you can improve the crop, you can improve the soil, and thereby the soil organic carbon, if improves, that could be traded, and that value could be hedged.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rahul, for that response. Farid, kindly respond to our last question.
Thanks, Edward. I think Raul has alluded to most of what I was thinking, but I think more importantly is we need, especially agtechs, need to come up with more cost-effective solutions that would basically attract the farmers. And I keep saying in most forums, especially around solutions for the farmers, is that start solutions with the farmers in mind. A lot of our solutions are largely boardroom solutions. So you find the actual practicability when you go to the ground becomes quite a challenge and an issue. So we need to begin to think in that perspective. And number three, I think I've seen a lot of solutions that are much more, or rather are largely oriented within the same way, or ways of thinking. I think we need to move to directions where we are covering almost the whole value chain from end to end, so that they're not just solutions that are concentrated in one particular end, and everyone else is working around farmer aggregation. No one is looking at markets. No one is looking at the good agronomical practices. No one is looking at adaptive measures of CSA. So we need to work with that. Yeah, I think largely for me that would be it.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this session. We love the insights with examples from India and examples from Africa here in Kenya. And we really appreciate and thank you for coming to attend this podcast. And we are going to be we're launching our virtual breakfast club, where I think most of you are aware of now. And this is going to be a forum where we exchange ideas in this way and come up with solutions, as we also try to mobilize resources to come and do some collaborative work to help save the planet in terms of climate change and resilience. So thank you very much for attending this session, and please feel free to also give us your comments about it.
I think this is a fantastic start by MSc team, MicroSave team. This is very much required in the present context, where every now and then our farmers are facing climate impact, and they are really helpless, because agriculture cannot be done in closed room. You need to have an open sky to do a cultivation, and this environment is becoming brutal for the farmers. So companies, startups, the enterprises should come forward and help those farmers to mitigate the climate risk. And yes, there are a lot of exercises that has been done, and farmers are getting help out of that. But yes, that needs to be uh, intensified at the field level, so that more and more farmer could have access to such facilities and support services. I would love, as a entrepreneur or as a startup, I would love to collaborate in context of Africa, how some of the produce which is very unique in African continent. For example, in India we have a GI tag, and I'm sure this GI tag crop is global synonym. So if there are such produce which is in Africa and which is very native and grown locally over there, we'll be love to market such kind of produce, how it can be traded globally. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Farid.
Yeah, thanks, Edward. I think this is it's a timely initiative that this is a conversation that people must have. Um, I'm happy that it's something you are thinking of as well. And from such initiatives, we should then be able to say, in terms of policy, in terms of scale, in terms of ensuring that we are moving in the right direction to address these monsters. As you rightfully said, it's here with us, and it's getting worse day by day. It's getting, 3 years ago, things that smallholder farmers experienced within the African context are totally different from what they're experiencing now. And they must learn that this is here. What are the interventions that they must take? What are the interventions that the government must begin to think through? Because 5 years from now, in governments that are not prepared for this, it's going to be a very difficult conversation for them. So I think it's a good initiative that we must embrace and bring as many people on board in terms of discussing way forward and ensuring that we are putting together things that would literally leave some legacy beyond ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen, for this session. And we hope to have more sessions like this where we can also exchange ideas in a collegial way. So thank you very much.